Shalom, my friends, this is Max Joseph, and I'm here because it is the 10th day of the month, which means that it is time for the top 10s. Today's top 10 will be my top 10 movies that you should watch right now. But before I go into anything, I just want to say something real quick. Black lives matter. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Black lives matter, and there needs to be change now. If you say otherwise, it's racist. Black people are just asking, hey, is it okay if my life matters? And there are people who respond with, but no. Stop. Black people shouldn't be afraid to go for a walk, or drive, or anything else that someone else can do if they aren't black. The whole argument of all lives matter is ridiculous. Because of course, all lives should matter, but the statement itself isn't true at the moment. In fact, it hasn't been true in any of our lifetimes. All lives can't matter until black lives do. This would be like if your house was on fire and the fire department showed up and your neighbor said, why are you helping out their house? So what if it's on fire? My house may not be on fire, but it matters. That is what people are saying when they say all lives matter. All lives matter cannot matter until black lives do. So if you're wondering what you can do, I added a link in the corner here and in the description that includes hundreds of ways where you can support Black Lives Matter. Whether you do it by donating, signing petitions, protesting, reading, and educating yourself, there are countless ways to help. And something I want to make clear is that the work will not stop, and that is vital to remember. This isn't something that will be fixed immediately. We all need to do the work, make sure that you are registered to vote, and cast your ballot when the time comes. Because it is up to us to make change happen. And not only is it your right to vote, but it is your duty. We have the power to make the world a better place, and we can do it just a little bit every day. So I'm vowing to do that, and I hope you'll join me. So this top 10 really doesn't have a number attached to each film because each film deserves a number one slot. One film isn't necessarily more important to watch than another because they are all vital. Also, all these films have come out within the last 20 years, which was on purpose because these films are still being made because things aren't really changing. All that being said, here are my top 10 movies that you should watch right now. Spoiler alert, the For All movies. Number 10, Just Mercy. The powerful true story of Harvard-educated lawyer Bryan Stevenson, who goes to Alabama to defend the disenfranchised and wrongly condemned, including Walter McMillian, a man sentenced to death despite evidence proving his innocence. Bryan fights tirelessly for Walter with the system stacked against them. So I just rewatched this, and two things really stuck out to me. The first was a quote that probably passed by most people. Bryan Stevenson, played by Michael B. Jordan, says to the cop, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" The cop responds with, "Just following orders." Just following orders. Sound a bit alarming? That's the first thing. The second was at the very end of the film. The person fighting to prosecute Walter McMillian was, quote, troubled because he knew he was wrong. So he had to make a difficult decision. He asked himself if he should play it safe or do what's right and set an innocent man free. Well, isn't that fascinating? Imagine a world where instead of people just following orders, they actually acted on what was right. Imagine if one of those officers said, hey, I think maybe you can get off his neck. George Floyd would be alive today. Instead, they stood idly by and murdered him. Stop following orders if you think it's wrong, because orders aren't always right. We're all guilty of it. But it is our duty to stand up in a situation that is wrong. And just speaking on the film now, the acting is phenomenal. It's a great ensemble piece, and the performances from Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx, and especially Rob Morgan should have received more recognition. I was thrilled that Fox got the SAG nomination, but I would have loved to see more. This film is unfortunately so timely, but it's free to view, and I highly recommend you give it a watch if you haven't already. Number 9, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Miles Morales is juggling his life between being a high school student and being a Spider-Man. When Wilson Kingpin Fisk uses a super collider, others from across the Spider-Verse are transported to this dimension. You may be asking, why is an animated film on this top 10? Well, many reasons. The big one is the message. And the message of this film is summed up in one line. Anyone can be Spider-Man. You can be Spider-Man. It sends the message that whoever watches this film can be great. No matter what you look like, what you believe, what color skin you have. If you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. It is inclusive of every single person. And what Spider-Verse did so beautifully is that it made a young black man Spider-Man. Most of the world who haven't read the comics just know about Peter Parker. They don't really know about Miles Morales. So when Sony made a film about a black man taking the mantle from a white person, that's saying something. Does the film really dig into the race and police brutality? Not as much as some of the other films, but I think it's one that kids should be watching. Like, I don't necessarily think it's appropriate for an 8-year-old to be watching Just Mercy, but you better believe that I'd be showing them Spider-Verse at a time like this. Teach the younger generation that what the world needs is love. And no matter what you look like, no matter what you believe or not believe in, you can be great. You can be great, and you can change the world for the better. A few days ago, Sam and I were going for a walk, and we saw a protest going on. It wasn't led by an adult. It was led by a child, probably in middle school. To me, that is what greatness looks like. That kid is Spider-Man. He is wearing the mask. Number 8, Selma. Selma, as in Alabama, the place where segregation in the South was at its worst, leading to a march that ended in violence, forcing a famous statement from President Lyndon B. Johnson that ultimately led to the signing of the Civil Rights Act. So some insane news that recently came out, or I guess was kind of like resurfaced, was that the Oscars allegedly snubbed Selma over the cast and crew's police brutality protest. Recently, David Oyelowo, who played Martin Luther King Jr., and director Ava DuVernay, said that the film was snubbed by Academy voters after the cast and crew protested the death of Eric Garner. Now, if you don't remember Eric Garner, he was murdered after a cop placed a chokehold on him in 2014. Oyelowo said in a post that the Academy called into the studio and our producer saying, "How dare they do that? Why are they stirring? We are not going to vote for that film because we do not think it is their place to be doing that." Wait a second. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences told a film, which was about the life of Martin Luther King Jr., that they shouldn't protest and stand up for what they thought was right. Do we see the irony? And if this doesn't sum up the current state of the world, I don't know what does. Peaceful protesters being punished for wearing t-shirts that said, "I can't breathe." That's a shame. Number 7, Black Panther. T'Challa returns home from America to the reclusive, technologically advanced African nation of Wakanda to serve as his country's new leader. However, T'Challa soon finds that he is challenged for the throne by factions within his own country as well as without. Using powers reserved to Wakandan kings, T'Challa presumes the Black Panther mantle to join with girlfriend Nakia, the Queen Mother, his princess kid sister, members of the Dora Milaje, the Wakandan Special Forces, who are awesome, and an American secret agent to prevent Wakanda from being dragged into a world war. I'd argue that this was the most impactful film of the last decade. It tackles issues on race, representation, colonialism, and this wasn't just another Marvel Cinematic Universe film, which I love. This is a Best Picture nominee that broke ground. You know why this was so important? Similar to Spider-Verse, in nearly every single superhero movie, you see a white man as the mighty hero. Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Captain America, Wolverine, Thor, Aquaman. The list goes on and on. Well, in Black Panther, you not only have a powerful black man as the superhero, but you also see Wakanda, which is more technologically advanced than any other place in the world. Black Panther gave audiences around the globe more representation. People were able to look at this movie and finally feel represented. Even if you don't like the film, if you don't like the MCU, that's totally valid. But what this film did cannot be ignored. I mean, it won the biggest award at SAG and 3 Oscars and made over $1 billion. Talk about impact. The acting's impeccable. Michael B. Jordan maybe gave some of the best work of his career. This film is incredible. It is powerful. It needs to be seen. Number 6, BLACKKLANSMAN. Colorado Springs, late 1970s, Ron Stallworth, an African-American police officer, and Flip Zimmerman, his Jewish colleague, run an undercover operation to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. First, let me say that Spike Lee is one of the greatest living writers and directors. Second, besides being about a black man infiltrating the KKK by disguising his Jewish colleague and how frickin' epic that is, the way that Spike was able to tie the entire movie into what is happening today is the most Spike Lee thing ever. BLACKKLANSMAN ends with footage from the 2017 far-right Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. It also shows the car driving through the people, which killed Heather Heyer. It includes Trump's comments and David Duke speaking on it afterwards. Then the final moment is the American flag upside down and fading to black and white. Why did Spike do that, I wonder? Maybe to shine a light on white supremacists and the president? I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it. You also had people that were very fine people on both sides. To be clear, Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, said that neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and nationalists were fine people, and the people protesting have some part in this blame. This is why we need change. This is why we need change. The film itself, obviously timely. John David Washington is a stud. Spike finally won his Oscar, and this is also one of my favorites of 2018. It's a remarkable piece of cinema, and Spike Lee proves yet again that he is one of the greats. Number 5, Get Out. Chris and his girlfriend Rose go upstate to visit her parents for the weekend. At first, Chris reads the family's overly accommodating behavior as nervous attempts to deal with their daughter's interracial relationship. But as the weekend progresses, a series of increasingly disturbing discoveries lead him to a truth that he never could have imagined. Talk about a film that made an impact. Look no further than Get Out. A film that shocked the world, and won Jordan Peele an Oscar for his screenplay. When I saw Chris, played by Daniel Kaluuya, go into the sunken place, I lost my mind. Not just because he was acting his face off and it was just an incredible looking scene, but because of the meaning behind the sunken place. Peele wrote in a tweet, "The sunken place means we are marginalized. No matter how hard we scream, the system silences us." And how Peele managed to do this in such an artistic way is the stuff of legends. Another brilliant move by Peele was towards the beginning of the film. Chris and his girlfriend Rose, played by Allison Williams, get pulled over. The cop asks for Chris's ID. That's normal, right? No. You know why? Chris wasn't driving. Rose was. Yet for some reason, Peele made a point that the cop would ask a black man for his ID, even though he wasn't driving. Sound a bit racist? Yeah. But it isn't news, unfortunately. This kind of stuff happens every day. And even though Rose acts like she's sticking up for him, it is our job to do the same, but actually mean it. Also, Kaluuya had my vote for Best Actor. This film is one that will continue to be studied, and we will continue to learn from it. And it is essential to watch it. Number 4, 12 Years a Slave. In the pre-Civil War United States, Solomon Northup, a free black man from upstate New York, is abducted and sold into slavery. Facing cruelty as well as unexpected kindnesses, Solomon struggles not only to stay alive, but to retain his dignity. In the 12th year of his unforgettable odyssey, Solomon's chance meeting with a Canadian abolitionist will forever alter his life. Anytime a movie like this comes out, everyone should see it. We need to learn from it. Some people will say that watching films as graphic as this one, it's toxic, it's not good. I strongly disagree. When we see Patsy, played unbelievably by Lupita Nyong'o, which earned her an Oscar, get whipped nearly to death. Yes, it is graphic, but it is so important that we see what people had to go through, and still go through. To me, there is no difference between reading a chapter on slavery in your social studies textbook and watching the events play out on a screen. Is one more visually graphic? Yeah, but it's there because it's history. Actually, it's not history because this still happens today. I'm not saying that you have to watch these movies, but I think it's important to. For me personally, and I 100% recognize that this isn't true for all people, but reading something and watching something bring up different emotions in me. I am more motivated to make change when I see something happen. And that's something that I need to work on because I'm not perfect. When I read something, I need to be better about acting on it. Nobody's perfect, but we should work to be better. Because without these films, would I be as motivated to make change in the world? I'm not sure. If George Floyd's murder wasn't captured on camera, would there have been change? I'm not sure. But it's on me, and it's on all of us to do the hard work. And then speaking on the film itself, Steve McQueen is a visionary. The ensemble could go up against any ensemble from the last decade. Lupita Nyong'o gave a top 10 performance of the decade, as did Chiwetel Ejiofor, and this film is a must-watch right now. Number 3, Moonlight. The tender, heartbreaking story of a young man's struggle to find himself, told across 3 defining chapters in his life as he experiences the ecstasy, pain, and beauty of falling in love while grappling with his own sexuality. Not only are we fighting for Black Lives Matter, but it is also Pride Month. And something interesting that I'm not sure many people know is that the first Pride wasn't what it looks like today. The first Pride was a riot. It was a riot led by trans women of color, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, on June 28, 1969. So a film like Moonlight comes to the table, and it not only talks about Black lives, but also Black gay men and the effects of toxic masculinity. I mean, that's screaming to be heard right now. It also features some of the finest acting I've ever seen, especially from Mahershala Ali, who won his first Oscar for his short but very memorable work. And thank you to Barry Jenkins, who created this masterwork and brought these topics to the big screen and tackled them in such a beautiful way. And I think Moonlight will stand the test of time as not only one of the greatest Best Picture wins at the Oscars, but one of the greatest films ever created, an absolute masterpiece that should be discussed right now. Number 2, The Hate U Give. Raised in a poverty-stricken slum, a 16-year-old girl named Star now attends a suburban prep school. After she witnesses a police officer shoot her unarmed best friend, she's torn between her two very different worlds as she tries to speak her truth. My goodness, is this right on the nose. And you want to know how this young man died? Well, he was murdered by a cop because he was reaching inside his car for a hairbrush, but the officer kills him. He kills him because he thought it was a gun. How sad is that? And it's not like this is a fantasy. This happens daily. You know what would maybe solve this? Maybe if officers were required to give a warning before shooting, or maybe try other methods before shooting. There are so many solutions to just shooting someone. Besides shining a very bright light on institutional racism and police misconduct, it also gives a voice to a young woman, played beautifully by Amanda Stenberg. It shows her standing up for what is right. And she is so powerful, which is what her name means, by the way. Even though her father made her memorize the Black Panther's 10-point program at 9 years old, she shows the world what standing up for what you think is right looks like. Also, this is one of the most underrated films of 2018. Amanda Stenberg is a literal star, pun unintentionally intended. Regina Hall is, shocker to no one, incredible, and Russell Hornsby gave the best performance of his career. One of my favorite quotes of the film is given by Star. She says, "It's not the hate you give, it's the hate we give." Let that sink in, my friends. It's not the hate you give, it's the hate we give. Honorable mentions. I have so many honorable mentions, so instead of listing them off here, I'm gonna pin a comment of a list of movies that I think the world needs to see right now. So feel free to leave a comment with a movie suggestion and I'll make sure to add it to the list. Number 1, Queen and Slim. It's an exploration of America's social and political climate through the lens of a true, genre-defying love story. It centers on a black man and woman who go on a first date that goes wrong after the two are pulled over by a police officer at a traffic stop. The situation escalates and they kill the police officer in self-defense. Terrified for their lives, they are forced to go on the run. But the incident is captured on video and goes viral, and unintentionally become a symbol for people across the country. I'm sharing something that I wrote 7 months ago when I saw Queen and Slim. I am a white Jewish male who grew up in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. I've been stopped by the cops 4 times in my life. 2 times it was because I was speeding on the highway. 1 was for running a red light, and the last one was for turning left when I wasn't allowed to. I only got ticketed for 2 of these violations, and I'm not saying this to boast that I got away with a couple tickets. I am saying this because most likely if I wasn't white, there's a much higher chance I would have received those 2 extra tickets and possibly something worse could have happened. In today's culture, when we see police brutality, most people will share a video and say, well, this is despicable. Things need to change. I'm sending thoughts and prayers to the victim's family. And then end it with a hashtag of the person's name and RIP. And then they go back to watching cat videos. So what I'm trying to get at is, maybe when these things happen, because they happen much too often, instead of going back to your regularly scheduled programs, do something about it. Don't just stand there and record what you're watching to get some views on social media. Say and do something. Join a protest. Learn the laws of your city. Be invested in what's going on in our country. Make a difference. That's kind of what I got from this film. It lit a giant spark under my ass, and I hope it does the same for you. Isn't it crazy that not much has changed? We are still out here, and there are still black people who are being murdered for simply being. Wake up. This stuff is happening all around us. Outside of the message of the movie, it has some of the best acting from anyone last year. Standout performances from Jodie Turner-Smith, who was a freaking revelation, and it was her feature film debut. And then it had Academy Award nominee Daniel Kaluuya, who continually delivers masterful performance after masterful performance. Melina Matsoukas' direction has a distinct and beautiful style that made it flow like butter. And Lena Waithe, well, to put it plainly, she is one of the world's best writers, and it shows in this film. I've heard people say that what happens in the movies doesn't happen in real life. Look where we are today. Those are my top 10 movies that you should watch right now. Let me know some other movies that you think that we should all be watching right now, and I will add it to the list on the top of the comments. And so, my friends, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure that you are registered to vote. I'm asking you to maybe join a protest, read and educate yourself, sign petitions, and try to make a change in the world. I'll continue to do the same. Shalom, my friends.